Hi, everyone. I'm Bruce Karasik, co-founder of the Jewish Republican Alliance and JRA Nation. Thank you for joining us. Mitch is traveling today and will be unable to join us, but he'll be back next time, and he sends his best wishes to all of you. What you heard in our opening were thousands of Tampa Bay Lightning fans and New York Ranger fans singing the Star-Spangled Banner in their Florida arena before Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals Wednesday night. But how inspiring that was to see a crowd patriotically and proudly singing the national anthem and defying those on the left who hate our anthem, hate our flag, are against Independence Day, and take our liberty and our freedoms for granted. We're so happy to have Anne Dunsmore here with us today. And there's nothing more patriotic than what Anne is doing in her efforts on this recall. So I'll be speaking with Anne in just a few minutes, but first, with the recall of California coming up on September 14th, Californians are so upset at the way we are being governed. And I thought it'd be a good idea to give you the list from her website. And here are some of the reasons why Governor Recall, that's a good one. Governor Gavin Newsom is being recalled. After hearing each one of these, I know that we easily could say after each one of these, as Jews do on the holiday of Passover, Dayenu, meaning that would be enough. Each one of these things would be enough to justify a recall. But there's some extreme government overreach that is taking place. There have been massive executive orders, the mandatory mail-in ballots, ballot harvesting, lack of signature verification that likely led to massive election fraud. There were ongoing shutdowns, loss of small businesses, loss of jobs. Do you know that unemployment checks went out to prisoners and felons that cost the state $1 billion? Do you know that they had an $80 million expenditure on billboard education to remind people to social distance? He granted clemency to felons, those who raped, murdered, even committed heinous crimes against children. He signed AB 5, a bill that radically changed 30 years of worker classification, reclassifying millions of workers from independent contractors to employees. We have the highest homeless rate in our nation. There's been consistent infringements on our Second Amendment rights with countless new gun laws. We are now a sanctuary state for illegal aliens and criminals. They made it illegal for legal for illegal aliens to sit on state boards. We have the highest state income tax in our nation. We are one of the highest state sales taxes in our nation. We have one of the highest property taxes in our nation. We have the highest vehicle registration costs in our nation, the highest poverty rate in our nation. Do you know that he diverted water tax funds for his own pet projects? Governor Newsom was fining people who did not have mandatory health insurance. And why did he do that? To raise $98 million to pay for free health insurance for illegal aliens. He restricted the ability of law enforcement to do their jobs and keep people safe. Do you know it's no longer illegal not to help an officer in need? Do you know we have the highest gas tax in the nation? And that was before the coronavirus. Do you know illegals are being given income tax refunds, welfare, medical insurance, housing, education, food stamps, cell phones, all free? They are redirecting gas tax funds that should have been used for improving our infrastructure, roads, dams, and bridges. If anybody's driven our freeways lately, you know they're not being used for that. They're going ahead to fund a bullet train to nowhere. We don't need this bullet train. And those funds are being redirected from things that we deeply need in this state. They refuse to set up a water claim system but they collected taxes to do exactly that. Everybody knows we've had consistent power outages and poor forest management that has led to fires over and over again. Do you know they spent your hard tax dollars, $200 million on a study to study vaping? They're funding illegal alien owned businesses in the amount of, guess it, $50 million. And when will these endless mask mandates end? It continues on and on, but they didn't just do that. They had squads that went around to look for people who didn't have masks and find them. We spent $1 billion on faulty masks from China. Did we learn our lesson? No. We went back again and bought $315 million more from the same company. We are $1.3 trillion in debt. We're preventing our farmers, our Central Valley farmers, from getting the water they need. Do you know he created a retroactive tax on those making $1 million or more? Retroactive. That means they didn't know that in the beginning. They spent $12 million on a sleep train arena that really was a total bust, and then gave $500,000 a month to the Sacramento Kings to rent a field to help sleep people in certain areas. People didn't even get what they needed. It was a total waste of money. And which is, I could go on and on. The crime that's going on in our state right now is out of control. Public safety is being deliberately ignored. Do you know he put an executive order to rid Californians of gasoline-powered vehicles by 2035? I don't remember voting on that. He redistributed people on death row into the main prison system, and then also allowed 72,000 criminals to hit the street. Well, I certainly now can say Diano, because that would be enough. Any one of these would be enough. But we have a great guest that we'd like to discuss this and much, much more. Again, we'd like to thank you for being here. And now I'd like to introduce Anne Dunsmore. Anne Dunsmore's nearly 40-year career has spanned more than 300 candidates, initiatives, referendums, businesses, and charities, from presidential campaigns to the development of the current Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. Her #1 goal for the September 14th recall election is to achieve a 50% +1 victory with a special election question: should we recall Governor Gavin Newsom, yes or no? So Anne, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
And I wonder, for those of you who don't know you, if you could take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself and your accomplishments over this amazing 40-year career.
Oh, thank you. And I think it's actually been since 1977, but I've always been sort of in denial once I hit 40. But at some point, it might be cool to say, well, I've been doing this for half a century. I don't know. I have to figure that out. You know, it's been an interesting ride, and I think this is sort of a culmination point. It comes at a time when, you know, we are in a post-partisan era, as you know. Majority, you know, of the people are starting to be registered as no party preference. And what that means is that they really don't want to be told what to do. They want to have their own opinions. And in my view, I think it's because at some point they want to just have support someone that they trust, that they believe is relatable and has a true north, a good compass, a good moral compass. Because we can all disagree on different things, and good people can disagree, and we need to get back to that place, because out of civil discourse comes real solutions that, and really isn't that what a democracy is all about? So this is really a referendum on governance, not just Gavin Newsom, but it's a message to anybody who thinks that they can have a one-party rule and completely eliminate any interaction or understanding of what their citizenry, what their citizenship and their citizenry really wants and needs, and the pain that they've been through and the solutions that they feel might be legitimate. Gavin Newsom is, and the people who surround him, I think, suffer from what I've now started referring to as dome zone tone deafness. And they feed each other information from within a box, totally disregarding anything that's actually real and happening on the street. And that's what this movement is. It's the citizens of California first. It's not Trumpism. It's not racism. It's not a Republican power grab. I think the only power grab going on right now, I mean, it's impossible for Republicans to grab anything in the state of California, but for sure, Gavin Newsom is having a hard time letting go of his executive powers that he instituted under the COVID restrictions that he's now lifted, but somehow he gets to keep his executive powers. So the issues that you've hit on are all very significant. What we found is that there's about 20 silver bullets that we could aim and fire that would decimate his political career. However, we have to hone it down to some simple messaging. And what we found is that the top issue in California across all demographics, across all parties, is homelessness. Stunningly, 40% of the Democrats disagree with or do not approve, gave him a D or an F on his approach to homeless issue. We've seen the same thing in gas taxes. That's just, have you passed a gas station lately and seen the price of gas? We're right on $5. If it goes to $6, which I'm pretty sure it will during the course of the summer, I think that's going to be really tough for him. So top amongst the issues was homeless. Second was crime. Not only did we have the Employment Development Department scandal where $35 billion was distributed to fraudulent claims for jobless benefits, but we've also not been paying legitimate claims, and they're way behind on that. The portal is constantly shutting down. I think you probably heard in the last couple of days, the jobless rates are going back up again. And so that's a real crime. And the money that was paid to these people, these criminals, is being recycled onto the street and feeding the spike in crime. So our taxpayer dollars are directly contributing to the rise in crime in the state of California. The third most important issue that I think, and none of these issues are COVID related, you'll notice. So homeless, crime, and now cost of living, which is highest taxes, as you've mentioned, highest sales tax, highest gas prices by at least $1.20 above the national average, vehicle fees, and housing costs are way above any affordable levels. So you're really talking about the perfect storm of issues against Gavin Newsom that are unparalleled. We didn't have this many when we recalled Gray Davis in 2003. So as far as my background is concerned, I've worked on 3 major recall elections. One was the campaign to recall Rose Bird, where I was just a little staffer, and then for a fundraising person, and then the campaign to recall Gray Davis, where I was also very involved in the fundraising and sort of gathering of signatures. And now I'm managing Rescue California, which is there's the original proponents, which is Recall Gavin 2020. We then came in and helped them gather an additional 800,000 signatures to get them over the top. We've qualified now with 1.7 million signatures. We submitted 2.1. And we're seeing candidates get in now. We've got another week. And if I could have 1 minute, I just want to address something that there's a lot of myths out there. Gavin Newsom is not on the ballot. We don't need to beat him. All we need to do is get 50% plus 1 on the yes vote, And then whoever gets a plurality of the votes or a majority of the votes on question number 2, which is who do you want to replace him with? He's not on that list. He can't replace himself. Also, this isn't a primary general. There's only the election on September 14th. Once it's certified, we have a new governor within 7 to 10 days by the end of September. So you know, I didn't get into my background as much, but yes, I've had the pleasure of working on some major projects, and it's given me all the training that I feel I need. I've worked on 15 presidential campaigns at least. And I feel like I've had the training now to roll this really big boulder up a hill.
Well, we're very grateful for all that you are doing. Just a monumental task in itself, just getting all those signatures and getting it on the ballot. And, you know, my hat's off to you for doing all that.
Largest volunteer effort, by the way.
Oh,
in the
I'm
United
sure it
States.
was.
Yeah.
Nothing better than the power of volunteers.
No.
So I have a question regarding the procedurally and how this all would work. So, you know, I've heard now that if Larry Elder intends to run, that he will be making an announcement on his show on Monday. So if, so we're talking about a plurality. So if Governor Newsom and people vote yes, and that is yes means to recall, correct? That means if they vote yes, he can no longer be one of those people who gets the plurality. Is that correct?
No, he won't be on the ballot.
Okay. So is there any chance that we, as Republicans, can have it's not a primary, but some kind of agreement amongst the candidates that the strongest one goes on the ballot, or are they all on the ballot?
That would be very bad for question number 1.
Okay.
Each campaign has the ability to bring a different demographic to the yes vote. If we had one candidate, like we had Arnold, fine, 3 million votes, 3.5 million votes is what Arnold won with. If any one of our candidates, if everybody dropped out and we had one of the candidates that we currently have, we wouldn't be able to get past 2 million votes. But by having so many different people, very significant ones, by the way. I mean, Larry Elder is going to bring in a completely different demographic than Kevin Faulconer. Caitlyn Jenner, she's not going to be stealing votes from John Cox, and John Cox isn't going to be stealing votes from her. We well could wind up with a winner that has 10 to 15% of the vote. That's probably what's going to happen. But each of them has ability to bring 1 to 2, and in some cases, maybe even as many as 3 million votes to the yes vote. However, one does not have the ability to bring that many to the yes vote. It would be horribly destructive of the process if we endorsed one candidate. I know that that doesn't sound right, but I say to anybody who's looking, listen, look, pick the top 3 candidates that you like, give them a little bit of money and see who does the best. They're going to have to turn around and win in a year. And we do not need we want to see who has the goods to win. And I think all of them should be given that chance. And then you just decide on who you like the best. But I don't think anybody can do a worse job than Gavin Newsom and be more dishonest or deceptive. From now on, because of the recall movement, everybody in government who's been elected is going to understand that they do not have autonomy over the decisions that are put in front of them, that they have to answer to the people who elected them, period.
Well, that would be really nice if people got that message. if there's one thing that comes out of this, that would be great.
Exactly.
So
accountability, who knew?
How many Democrats are running? Are there a whole pool of people running?
Sure, there's some, but I don't think they're any significant. I think that the Newsom machine and the Pelosi machine has done a really good job in intimidating people and suppressing anybody's interest in running. You know, the Gray Davis did the same thing, and Cruz Bustamante decided to run at the last minute and never heard from him again. So they've been successful in doing that, and I think it's a bad mistake. They need a plan B, and they're not going to have one. So I'm fine with that too.
Do you have any internal polling on what you think is going to happen first with the question, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. What are
Yeah.
you seeing?
So we did a poll. We did 1,000-person sample, 3% margin of error, and we really didn't play any games with it. We don't want to be blind to what it's going to take to win. We're not here to massage our own egos or market anything. We need to know what the message needs to be because there's so many of them that we can use. We really had a hard time sorting through what are the top 5 of the 20 to 30 we could use. What moves the needle the most across all demographics. So just before we did the poll, Gavin Newsom was completing a $10 million 2-week media blitz. Yet, before we asked any questions or gave any indication of pushing on any issues, it came back 46% for a recall and 50% against a recall, which is basically split down the middle. We oversampled Democrats, we undersampled Republicans, and we also overestimated the turnout model. So we really feel like we could even say we're ahead. You just breathe on these numbers, any of the issues at all, and they move by a point or two, if not more, across all party lines, by the way. As I mentioned earlier, 40% of the Democrats don't agree or don't approve, gave him failing marks on the handling of the homeless issue. That's before you get to gas prices or anything else, which is just as remarkable in all of those categories. So we do show a very good place that we're starting from. And by the way, I don't mean to belittle the process or the need to recall the governor, but I was asked last week, what's your strategy going into phase 2? And I said, I think it's ours to lose. And maybe what I ought to do is just get a beach chair and just sit back and let him continue to make mistakes and go in the wrong direction and underestimate the upset that's on the ground and the feelings of the people that he has hurt over and over again for the last year and a half. So, very good numbers, very supporting numbers of on the 3 issues that I've told you about. I mean, those are 48% of the people polled are strongly supportive of our position on any of the, or strongly disapprove of him. We're not even posing alternatives to these things. We're just saying, look what he did. Look what he's doing. And the underlying element of all of it is the deception and the deceit. And once you've deceived somebody, it's really hard to be, he could come up with a great proposal on everything and nobody would believe him. And that's the problem. That's a big problem for him, especially in the short term.
Well, I know one of the things, I agree with you. I think one of the things that he did, beside all these policy issues, that I think most people don't even know about half of these things that I read. I would like them to know about it. But one of the things that I know that everybody knows about it, when we were all locked down, we couldn't go to restaurants, we couldn't go out, everything was shut down. And he's sitting there with 22 people in a French Laundry indoor dining area without a mask, yucking it up with his friends while all the businesses were going under.
And he got COVID relief to protect 14 jobs. That was far more. I think it was several million dollars. That was far beyond anything that any other business entity who had the same number of employees qualified for. There's so many things like that you can point to on deception. Let's take the fire issue because that's a cost of living issue. That's a quality of life issue. He overstated by 690%. Now that's not just sort of a casual rounding error. 690%. He said, oh, well, I had a fire mitigation plan that we spent X number of dollars on in 2019 and for 90,000 acres. And then his own department comes out and says, no, it was really 10,000 acres. So 78,000 acres went untouched by that plan. And so he overstated it 690%. I think that there's so many other things in there like that. And the no bid contracts alone are flabbergasting. Somebody said, why is he not giving up executive power? I said, because it's his biggest fundraising tool. He's raising money hand over fist from people that he's awarding contracts to perfectly comfortable talking about it to the press and having it in the media, and it's obvious pay to play. So, and Jason Kinney, the birthday boy at the at the French Laundry, represents most of those companies. So it's very incestuous. It's awful. And by the way, and now I hear that he's buying up restaurants that he had a part in closing. So I don't know, kiddo. You figure it out. I think he's a bad man. I think he's graduated to not just being a bad politician, of which there are many. He is now in a pretty good spot to be called just not a good person.
You know, there's so many things, like you said, and I'm trying to get to as many as possible, and a lot of them have really bothered me. But one of the things that has bothered me was that last summer, when we had the George Floyd protests,
Yeah.
California was perfectly fine with letting people congregate in large groups, and then prevented people from going to any place of worship. In fact, they went after them. If you had a small group of people in a church or a temple, they went right after them, but turned their back as people burned stores, robbed, looted, and then they sent these policemen in harm's way. These are people who have families, and the next couple of days they just let them go.
Yeah. And there's a lot of hypocrisy in there. I think the whole concept of self-dealing and deception is really going to become an underlying pivot point for people as they approach the polls. They're going to get confused by a lot of the issues. There's a great term out there, gaslighting, that I've just started. I feel old. I'm just starting to understand it. But the basic premise of gaslighting is actually what I think we're seeing here, where, you know, we're being told that it's black when it's blue, or it's green when it's yellow. And oh, by the way, it's your fault. And it's, you know, we're doing the best we can, but we have this problem because of somebody else. You blame the person. And I think you're looking at a citizenry that's en masse a victim of gaslighting Gavin the gaslighter. I mean, I guess that's what we're gonna have to start calling him, but
I haven't heard that.
It is a psychological warfare, and it's not appropriate.
And these things, you know, people often have said in the past, well, I'm not interested in politics, you know, I'm not a political person. This is not politics. These are things that affect everybody's daily life.
Right.
When you release 72,000 criminals from the justice system,
2/3 of the felons in prison, 2/3,
and you let them go.
Let them go.
And then you can't even go into any big city. It's happening not only here in California, but these Democratic governors are doing this all over the country. You see shootings in Times Square now, but we're talking about California now. And it's not safe for people if you let criminals go. Just when we had the 3-strike rule, we were safe, and now things are changing.
Well, look at Northern California. You know, the Bay Area, their Target and Walmart, I believe, are closing early because they can't handle the robberies. And these are misdemeanors. It's like getting a parking ticket. You know, if you go in and you rob a store for less than $900, and they go in with calculators, and then they go to the next one and the next one. 7-Elevens, for example, are being particularly hard hurt, and people are starting to get hurt during these robberies now too, which is definitely a shift. And you're seeing major crime spikes. And the summertime, that's the worst. Summertime is absolutely the worst for spikes in crime. And you know, this is why he called the election early. These are things that he can't control by throwing money at him. It's too late for him to fix the whole debacle of defunding the police. You're not going to walk up and send a social worker to some guy who's pulling stuff off the shelves at Walmart and say, hey, let's have a little discussion about this, and maybe you can see a better way of you know, grabbing a set of silver off the shelves. I don't know. I don't think so. I think you need an officer who's armed, who can mitigate the situation. I think definitely there were some boundaries that were overstepped that created this problem, but for the most part, I don't think people across any party lines think that we're in a safe environment when you take law enforcement off the street.
have a question from James R. He's in our audience, and he says, from his readings, he thinks we're closer to $2 trillion in debt, with about 75% of the unfunded liability of the public servant retirement costs, including full medical costs to retirees. I quoted a 1.3. I guess when you're talking in trillions, it gets overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, and I have to tell you something, when you're dealing with a citizen movement, some of these other issues like unfunded liabilities tend to just sort of it's too big a concept of hurt when they don't have a job and they're supporting, 3 generations, in some cases 4 generations worth of family under one roof. And all of the psychological damage that's happened to our children, academic and psychological stress from the flip-flopping on going back to school and just desocialization of our children, the unemployment of their parents. I mean, unfunded liabilities doesn't sort of tend to make it onto the radar screen. Frankly, of the top 20 issues, believe it or not, closing churches and all the things that just, were our only, go-to in a week. Those issues are not, he's actually getting good grades for how he handled the COVID pandemic. Well, that's fine, but guess what? Come September, we're looking at round 2 on that, I'm sure. And secondly, I hope everybody's noticed the Cal OSHA decision, where Cal OSHA said, if there's one person in a place of work, by the way, that was a fascinating thing to watch. In the morning, they said all masks off June 15th. And then later, early evening, Cal OSHA said, oops, sorry, we have to revise our statement, because here's actually, so don't think there weren't a lot of calls coming out of Gavin Newsom's office and possibly even the White House, where they were saying, well, no, here's the revised statement on masks. If one person in a workplace has not been vaccinated, then everybody in the workplace has to wear a mask. Great. What does everybody think that's going to look like in September or August when our children go back to school, that they have to be vaccinated or they can't come back to work? And oh, by the way, teachers I believe, are not going to be required to wear masks. So we have a lot of funny stuff. We could have COVID part 3, or however you want to look at it, slamming him in the head before September 15th as well, for September 14th.
Yeah, I agree with you, Anne, but I don't know how he possibly could get high marks for the way he handled COVID. It's so inconsistent.
He's just spent $10 million gaslighting people, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay. And that's what you're going to see. And I really need to warn people, be careful what he says, because he is not believable and you are being gaslighted by Gavin. That's what those ads are. Here's the thing that was stunning about the poll, and our pollster looked at it and he said, I've never seen the intensity. People had answers to the questions before we asked them, meaning they had already developed an opinion. Usually you're looking at a persuadable group of people who would be like somewhat likely. These people were much more likely in huge numbers on every single question we asked. Why? Because they have personally been impacted by the topic of that question. They had personal understanding and knowledge of it.
Wow, unbelievable. So leading up to the 2020 presidential election, I talked every time we came on about unsolicited mail-in ballots, lack of signature verification, ballot harvesting. Republicans continue to still run on issues while Democrats are running on collecting ballots. How do we...
Are you just talking about the presidential election, or are you talking about this?
Well, this now, because I
don't think that's true.
So are you telling me that, well, you would know better than me?
Well, I would go back to last year, frankly. I mean, look, we, when I say we as a Republican Party, in May, Mike Garcia beat the pants off of the Democrat and, Democrat opposition to take back a seat in Los Angeles County. In November, every single ballot issue that Gavin Newsom endorsed failed in a presidential election year where a Democrat won the White House. Thirdly, California took back 25% of all the seats that were taken from blue to red. We took them back in California. So there's an undercurrent of unrest here that I've seen before. I saw it on the heels of Jerry Brown when we took back the governorship. We had 16 years between Pete Wilson and George Duke Majan. We had the speakership in the assembly because they just pulled the rubber band just a little too tight to the left, and it snapped back, and it snapped back for a long time. And then we did the same thing. And now I'm saying, I think California is a no party preference state. You can't tell no party preference. No party can tell them what to do. That's the definition of no party preference. They will vote. They are conservative on law enforcement. They don't like taxation here. They don't like being taken for granted. Best article headline I saw today: I'm Hispanic. Don't assume I'm a Democrat. Big message. And don't think he doesn't know it. He's got a big problem in LA, and he's got a big problem in a Hispanic population as well, especially.
I completely agree with you on all that, 100%. What my concern is what they did was they filled out these ballots in mass, but they never voted in the down ballots when they collected all these ballots. So you would have ballots that would come in large numbers marking Joe Biden, and none of the other boxes were even marked.
Well, they had to have been, because we beat them on all the propositions, and we beat them in some very heavily funded Democrat congressional races, and we took back those seats. So I really would question that. But just on the norm, down ballot is often never receives the votes at the top of the ballot anyway. And so that's just a normal thing that you'll see everywhere. But there was some serious turning back of the clock on the November ballot towards the conservative, the conservative positions almost unilaterally. And now you're also looking at the recall of Gascon and Chesa Boudin, San Francisco DA and the LA DA. And I think you're going to see some really big, oops, made a big mistake there. Never going to do that again. Never going to do that again. So we can agree to disagree on that.
Okay, well, I'm hoping you're the one that's right on this one. We have a question from Kim M. What is the deadline for candidates to file to run?
30 days. I'm sorry. Let's see. I think they have about another week. I think they have to file within 59 days of the election.
And Matt R. asks, is Newsom eligible to run in a year?
Yes.
Okay, so he can come back even if he loses. He just won't be on this ballot.
Right.
Okay. Michael K. is asking, thank you for your insights. Do you think Governor Cuomo's recent emergency declaration on gun control issues in New York will be replicated in California to perpetuate the California governor's power base?
I think Gavin Newsom is looking over his shoulder all the time on what he chooses to do policy-wise. That's why I kind of think our movement's already won. He's making decisions based on the recall. It's not what he was planning on. He was planning on launching a campaign for president, I think. And I think that the gun issue is one in California where he's going to lose a few points, and he can't afford to lose anything, not even half a point. So I think you're going to see him kind of maybe knock it off on a few things, and that might be one of them. There'd be a lot of national pressure. Listen, most of the mistakes he's making right now is because he has to cave to the progressives in his own administration, and it doesn't fly with California. California does not go with that stuff, and he doesn't even know that. His own people don't even know. That's the really unbelievable thing, is like, wow, they're so disconnected. They think that labeling us as Trumpists and racists is going to move the needle. It hasn't done anything for him. He hasn't recovered from his 10-point drop at all after $10 million in months of payoffs of voting blocks of people. I mean, everything's about political payoffs right now for votes, and I just don't think it's succeeding.
James R. is with all the questions that we had about these voting machines,
Oh, yeah.
do we have this problem in California?
We might, but it's not one that's going to change the outcome. And that, again, is evidenced by what happened last year in May with the election of Mike Garcia, and in November, where we just clobbered them. We clobbered them. California, on a conservative level, clobbered the Democrats. And I'm using conservative instead of Republican because the no party preference is not all just a bunch of, going in lockstep with the Democrats or the Republicans, but they chose to be more conservative about their choices on these issues, as well as a large portion of LA County moving to elect and reelect a Republican for Congress in a seat that had been held by a Democrat, and then 4 more on top of it. So Dominion, yes, there's going to be flaws in our voting system for a very long time to come. I'm not one of those people who thinks that mail-in ballots hurts us, because it didn't hurt us last year. It didn't hurt us. We won. In California, we won. If we win in California, that's 10 times when the Republican Party wins in another state. We're the largest state in the country. We don't have any we've twice as many Democrats here as there are Republicans, and we won. Please, everybody, remember that. We won, and the numbers are not moving in their favor right now at all, nor have they been for a year, and they know it.
Well, a lot of us think we also won the presidential election, but I won't get into that here.
Well, there wasn't much of that here, so.
That's true.
Yeah.
So Hava S is asking, how are people learning about Newsom's corruption? One of the things we're trying to put together, and we're talking to all the candidates, we're going to be doing a big event. It's going to be our first big live event back with all of them. We hope, we can schedule it for a time when you can attend. But how are people learning about this? I mean, I saw this on your website in preparing for today's meeting. You want to tell us about your website and what's on there?
Sure. Rescue California spelled out .org. That's rescuecalifornia.org. You can send me notes there too. I try to be responsive as much as I can. But the list of things that are reasons to recall Gavin Newsom, pull it down and email it. I mean, we are going to have an aggressive campaign, and people also need to remember we have 5 or 6 candidates that are going to be spending well over $1 million, and in some cases they've already spent more than 5. John Cox, I think, spent about $7 or $8 million already on the campaign. So there's going to be a lot of rocks and arrows being flung at Gavin Newsom, and not just by us. On top of it all, he's our best asset. We have done nothing, no messaging, and we have brought him to his knees. His numbers went down by 10%. We didn't bring him down, but he brought himself down. And he looks like he's going to continue to do that. And I think that, like I said, just breathing on these numbers just a little bit, and he loses by double digits. So I think that we're well poised. The website, again, rescuecalifornia.org. I encourage people, you don't have to live here to help here. And whatever happens in California is going to send a very big message one way or the other across the country. And I think to some extent, we've already won a big part of the battle, because he's responding to the recall. He is being accountable, but he just doesn't know what position to take to please people, and he's pleasing the wrong people. So I think that please punch the volunteer button. Please punch the donate button. We're doing a lot of canvassing and phoning. People can do it from their homes. And we will train you to utilize the platform and participate in getting rid of probably the worst governor, at least in the history of this state, possibly in the history of the nation. I just haven't seen anybody deal with the amounts of money that he's dealing with and be so negligent.
We have a question from Julie S. What kind of consequences criminally can be held against Newsom? Why hasn't he been charged with any of these grievances? Is there any criminal liability here, or is this
I
just
don't know.
he walks away scot-free?
Possibly. It's not going to get proven before September 14th.
No, not at all.
And so, at the end of the day, we just got to get rid of them. I think there are going to be a lot of things that are going to come home to roost if we're not successful that are going to plague him for the rest of his life. And others around him. But he's appointed the judges, and there's some that'll, feel that they can act with some buffer from him, but he's a punitive man. His party because party leadership is punitive. We see it everywhere. Even people who agree with, and that's the other thing. He's propagating a culture of yesism to him that doesn't show him where people are uncomfortable or what. And I think there's going to be a lot of lever pulling on election day, or vote yes on the recall, that he's just not aware of, because he's not open to criticism, and he's not open to challenge, and he's not open to anything but his way or the highway. It's going to hurt him. It's already hurt him.
Let's hope so. I've got a personal question for you.
Sure.
You've taken a real courageous stand to get involved against, big politics like this. Have you had any retribution threats come your way?
No, I've had a few. I believe in a power much higher than I'll ever see, but it certainly lives with me every day, and I try to do the right thing, and I think this is the right thing. I think this is what my life has taken me to, so I don't fear the unknown. Um, and come what may, uh, I do have a bad habit of pushing big boulders up very steep hills, but I have cut back on doing more than one or two at the same time. But I think it's my obligation. I think I've been blessed with wonderful children, and been blessed to live in California. And it's time. I'm 65 years old. I've got a good period of time where I can participate in making things better, and I'm uniquely qualified, I think, to do it. And maybe just dumb enough to actually try, and smart enough to succeed a little bit. So I've got a great team of people. I'm not doing this alone. I love working with the original petitioners. They've taken a lot of heat, more than I have. The volunteer force is unbelievable. And they're out there. They're still out there. It's what they've lived and breathed for over a year. And I've got great people on Rescue California. So I didn't do it alone. And thank God for that. And thank God for giving me the ability to do what I think is right.
Well, we are at a debt of gratitude. All of California is win, lose, or draw for what you've done to take this effort on and to help get this done. Well, we talked about this. Scott J is talking about how can Republican vote be solidified. And I think what you're saying is there is no way to solidify it. We're going to have the most appealable candidates. So far, we have, if I understand, we're hoping that we hear from Larry on Monday.
Yeah.
But John Cox, Faulkner, Caitlyn Jenner. Am I missing anybody?
Yeah, Doug Ossie, former congressman from up north.
Okay.
He has an ability to wrap his arms around a million or so votes. It may only be 1 million or 1.5 million votes that win this. You don't know. I think Kevin Kiley got in this last week, and he's been very vocal and successful in taking the governor to task, and won in court. He's an assembly member from up north. He's young. He's got a great future in front of him. I think we have a lot to be proud of. I don't think we need to take sides. Let's give this bench a chance to do their job and bring people to the yes vote, and make a decision when you can on who of them. And then I want to say, to no party preference and disenfranchised Democrats, there's another election in a year. A year is a long time to keep a bad guy in office, one who seems to be spending money like Pez. I mean, he's doing giveaways of 15, 20, $30 billion a week. It's not sustainable. But I guarantee you that there's nobody who is going to win and replace Gavin Newsom who's going to be worse than Gavin Newsom. So give it a chance. Let's just give it a break. If nothing else, at least let's just get rid of him, and give this state a chance to breathe, and give the citizens a break, and give people some hope here. Let's stop the bleeding.
I agree. Got a compliment here from James R. Anne has her act together. I am impressed. The recall is in great hands. So I wanted to pass that along to you. And they had a question about this being recorded. Yes, we're recording this. We will be posting this on our YouTube channel. And if any of you would like to post it on any of your sites, we'll send it along to Anne. If you want to post it on your website or send it out to your folks, happy to do that too. What people want to hear, I'm hearing several questions, is how do we get the word out? And I think that's one of the ways that we can do it.
You know, I just want to, I just want to make a point too. Now is not the time to cave to the party vitriol that we've all been dealing with for the last few years. I think it's time now to be California citizens, humans, neighbors, parents, grandparents, students whose future of the country is in their hands, the future of the state. Educate yourself on this thing, pay attention, participate. I encourage everybody to vote. I'm not one of those people that says, ooh, let's, the more people who vote, the worse. That's not how I feel. And it's not how a lot of people feel. I would go seek out the people that you've been disagreeing with and say, hey, good people can disagree. We're going to learn how to have civil discourse on things that are important. We're not going to argue. We're not going to scream. We're not going to hurt each other. We're going to come together, do the best we can to fix California. If this is, this is a maintenance issue here. This is our home. This is our backyard. This is where our children can flourish or not. It's where our parents can retire and with dignity, and people can live here in some form of peace. So let's go ahead and join hands on this. Let's not make it partisan. Let's focus on the issues. They're not partisan at all. This is not a power grab. It's a long way for the California Republicans to wade their way back into any form of majority from the one-party rule that we're in. But what we can do is vote on the issues, vote on the moral compass, and the fortitude that someone has to get us back to where we deserve to be.
Well, Anne, I want to thank you so much for your coming on our show, for your time, for all your efforts to help California. We are deeply indebted for you. Can you give us your website one more time?
Oh, of course, rescuecalifornia.org, rescuecalifornia.org, all spelled out. Hit the donate button, hit the volunteer button, pull down the reasons to recall Gavin Newsom and forward them along. If nothing else, take an hour every day, make sure you're in touch with people and say, did you even know that this is what's going on? And before we forget, don't forget about water. Water's going to become, we're already seeing water rationing. It's going to be famine level drought here. His biggest donors own companies that consume more water than all of San Francisco and LA combined. This is just not where we need to be right now. It's not the person who should be leading us. It's time for a change, and I look forward to everybody really working towards that.
Well, thank you, Anne, again. And we'll be in touch and be working with you in the coming month or so before September 14th to see how we can help. Okay,
thanks so much. And Rescue California and our team, we really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
Thank you, Anne. Well, what can you do? You can stay informed, get involved, and make a difference. Go to Anne's website, go to our website, join our conversations, attend events, participate in social media, network. We're going to be doing live events again. We're planning them. We're working them out. We'll be live in front of you very, very soon. You need to get involved. Get involved with Anne's campaign. Get involved with the Jewish Republican Alliance. Serve on a committee. Volunteer. Get out there and make a difference. Our website is jewishrepublicanalliance.org, jewishrepublicanalliance.org. You can become a member there. You can donate to our organization. And we really enjoy bringing you these events that we can do virtually. And again, we'll be doing live events very, very soon. So until we meet again, we wish you a great weekend. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. See you soon.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you very much.